specific areas. Dr. Darma works at the Dr. Soimoto Hospital Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Erlangga. Please mind me if I pronounce incorrectly. As a pediatric gastroenterologist in Surabaya, Indonesia. Today he will share with us with the result from the APPSGHAN endoscopy survey. Please, Dr. Darma.
Thank you. Thank you, Ponte, for your kind introduction. And good morning to all of you. It's very happy to see familiar faces here after 2 years break. Okay, first of all, I do really appreciate the organizing committee for the first APPSGHAN endoscopy masterclass, Professor Nutapong Kerpol, and thank you for the president of APPSGHAN, Professor Supon Tripong Karuna, and the chair of scientific committee for subcommittee endoscopy, Professor Katsuhiro Arai. Thank you for letting me to present the regional survey of pediatric endoscopy service in Asia Pacific. This is the first report from APPSGHAN. So as we know that Asia Pacific is really broad, as it consists of 49 countries, has more than half the population of the world, 4.34 billion populations, and right now we don't have any data of how many pediatric endoscopy centers, how many pediatric endoscopists in the countries in Asia Pacific. You can see from these slides that 10 out of 20 most populated countries lies in the Asia Pacific. So it is very important for us to have a better pediatric endoscopy service in this region. From the Human Development Index, we can see that across Asia Pacific, we can see that a few countries has a very high Human Development Index, and a few countries has the low Human Development Index. So with very high variability, so we should have a better approach to have a pediatric endoscopy services and pediatric endoscopy training in our region. So we performed the first pediatric endoscopy survey led by the scientific committee, subcommittee endoscopy under Professor Katsuhiro Arai, and we do perform internet survey on the 15 country members of APPSGHAN. And we do one response for each country for the representative of National Society of Pediatric Gastrohepatology and Nutrition. And we ask for one response for each center, for each pediatric endoscopy centers. The survey consists of approximately 70 questions about the resources availability, the human resources, and all the experiences, all the basic or advanced diagnostic and therapeutic procedures, about the procedural sedations, about the pediatric endoscopy training, and about the COVID-19 adaptation as well. It's done on June and September 2021, and ethical approval is from the National Center for Child Health and Development from Japan. About the resources availability, we asked about the facility, about the basic to advanced endoscopy, especially for the infant, less than 1 year old or less than 10 kilograms for the endoscopy services. For the small bowel evaluations, for the capsule endoscopy, balloon-assisted enteroscopy, and more advanced endoscopy, such as endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography in children, and for the therapeutic endoscopy. We asked about the human resources. Not many centers has pediatric gastroenterologists, so in areas with less or without pediatric gastroenterology, we still found that adult gastroenterologists still help us to performing the endoscopy for pediatric. And the other hand, a pediatric surgeon, digestive surgeon, and the general surgeon, we still found that they're still performing endoscopy for pediatric. About the basic advanced gastrointestinal diagnostic and therapeutic endoscopy, we see the volume, the procedures about the esophagogastroduodenoscopy or ileocolonoscopy. The small bowel endoscopy, this is a very interesting one, is about the capsule endoscopy, balloon-assisted enteroscopy, endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography. And we asked about the therapeutic endoscopy, about bleeding control foreign bodies, polypectomy, GI dilatation or stenting, and Botox injection. We asked about pediatric training, because in this area, there is a country with specialized with pediatric endoscopy training, and there's still others with mixed adult and pediatric endoscopy training. About the procedural sedations, who will perform the sedation? Is it the anesthesiologist or the endoscopist or the others? So because we are still in the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe at the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, the survey also asked about the COVID-19 adaptation across the Asia Pacific. But we should be noted that survey was performed on June and September 2021, is approximately 15 to 18 months after the pandemic began. So I think the safety measures had been taken by all centers. However, there are variations between countries. So let's see the results. There are 13 out of 15 countries participated in the survey. It's about 86.7 response rate. It's about 162 pediatric endoscopy centers participated. I believe there's still more pediatric endoscopy centers, but I have very relieved that we have 162 centers participated on our first survey. And most of them, about 80%, is from the academic hospital, either from the secondary or tertiary. So a lot of pediatric endoscopy services is performing in the academic hospital more. About the volume of the procedures, we can see from the gastroscopy or ileocolonoscopy, there's still more than 50% of ileocolonoscopy. There are more than 50% is less than 50 procedures per year, and almost 50% for esophagogastroduodenoscopy. They're performing only less than 50 procedures per year. So it's a very low in volume for gastroscopy and for ileocolonoscopy. You can see for the distribution of operators performing pediatric gastroscopy and ileocolonoscopy procedures. Almost 100%, 97.5 or 95% centers. The pediatric gastroenterologist is the one who performing gastroscopy and colonoscopy. But we can see that there are 50% of the centers. The adult gastro is still help us to performing the endoscopy in pediatric. Because there's a few centers, they only have one pediatric gastroenterologist in one center, and then the adult will help, especially maybe for the adolescents, then the adult gastro is still performing the endoscopy. Pediatric surgeon, there are 40% and 31% for colonoscopy. They're still performing the pediatric endoscopy in 40 to 31.5% of centers. This is for the small bowel endoscopy, for capsule endoscopy and balloon-assisted enteroscopy. We can see in the capsule endoscopy, almost 50%, 48% is not performing capsule endoscopy in the region. It could be because it is lack of availability of capsule endoscopy and lack of access, because the capsule is a little bit costly. Then, yeah, just small, easy gastroscopy. And we can see from the balloon-assisted enteroscopy, is 71% is not performing balloon-assisted enteroscopy for pediatric. It is not only because of lack of availability, but also maybe skill. For the pediatric gastroenterologist, it's not skillful to performing balloon-assisted enteroscopy. This is for the distribution of operators. The operators for capsule endoscopy, pediatric gastroenterologist is still the one who performing the capsule endoscopy, but not for the balloon-assisted enteroscopy. You can see that adult gastroenterologists in 70% of centers, they were the one who performing the balloon-assisted enteroscopy for the pediatric patients. And for the ERCP, it's more advanced endoscopy procedures in children. There are 62% is not performing ERCP in pediatric. It is because there's a lack of cases, probably because not so many cases need ARCP in pediatric, but also there's a lack of skills in pediatric gastroenterology. It's not exposed with ARCP when they have their training. But in about 8% of the centers, they're still performing ERCP routinely. So they're performing still endoscopic sphincterotomy, endoscopic papillary bile dilatation, endoscopic retrograde gallbladder drainage, and stenting. And it's about the same. It's similar with the balloon-assisted endoscopy. The pediatric ERCP is performing by the adults gastroenterologists. 87% of the center who is the one who performing the pediatric ERCP is the adult gastro, and only 22.6% the pediatric gastroenterologist is the one who performing pediatric gastro. And last but not least is about the therapeutic endoscopy. We can see that foreign body removal and polypectomy is the most common thing about therapeutic endoscopy performing in pediatric. About 93.5% and 89.7%, they're performing the foreign body removal and polypectomy. It should be noted for us, for the pediatric endoscopy training, we should include two kinds of this therapeutic endoscopy in our basic endoscopy training in pediatric, because there's so many cases with foreign body removal in children and with polypectomy as well. About sedation. The sedation of operator, the 65.4% of the centers, the anesthesiologist is already performing the sedations, but there is still 35% of the centers, the endoscopist or the proceduralist is performing the sedation. This is the sedation producer type by age group. What is the interesting thing here? There's about 6 to 8% the endoscopic procedures is performing without any sedations in 6 to 8% of the centers, and about 60% they're performing with general anesthesia. About the endoscopic training program, there are 55% of the centers, they're performing mixed adult and pediatric endoscopy training, and the rest, 45%, they're only pediatric endoscopy training only. There's some advantage or disadvantage about this one. If we do using adult and pediatric endoscopy training, the pediatric gastroenterologist has exposed more in therapeutic endoscopy, because in adult they have more cases, but in pediatric endoscopy training only they have more exposed in pediatric. So it is kind of, we should think about it if we try to make about how we do performing our endoscopy training. For the mentor, for the training mentor, 89% using the pediatric endoscopies, and 51.2 is the adult gastro performing endoscopy. About COVID-19 adaptations, thanks to Dr. Catherine Walls for very extensive COVID-19 adaptation for endoscopy. We can see that a decreased number, there's a decreased number, about more than about 80% is decreasing number, and even more, 40% decrease more than 50%. But there is still 6 to 9% having no difference in number. This is what we have in our survey, and like the APPSGHAN recommendation to use the negative pressure room, this only, in Asia Pacific, only 54% using the negative pressure room for the COVID-19 confirmed patients, and about 45.7% is not using the negative pressure. Especially, we found this in about a low resources country. This is what the APPSGHAN recommendations, and we try to. This is our we have data in the Asia Pacific about the using of the goggles, the mask, and it's only 87.7% they're using N95 masks or equivalent masks, even for the one with suspected COVID-19. It's not 100% using the N95 mask. About the endoscopic training course during the COVID-19 pandemic, 78% they're postponing the endoscopic training. So the COVID-19 is not only impacted the endoscopy services, but also the endoscopic training. So the future direction after we have the first survey is the survey will be the cornerstone of our Asia Pacific Pediatric Endoscopy Network or collaboration. And we will have more and more endoscopy-based research in Asia Pacific, and we tend to improve our quality of pediatric endoscopy services and training. And before our last slide, this is me so it is my second in here. So this is 2018 with Professor Peter Levinen, I think. And then on behalf of APPSGHAN Scientific Committee, Subcommittee Endoscopy, Professor Katsuhiro Arai, myself, Shinichiro Hakiwara, CEO, Professor Nutapong Karapol, Professor Ji Feng U, and Professor Supon Pritapong Karuna. We say thank you, terima kasih, arigato gozaimasu, hamsa hamida, xie xie, and kobun kap. Thank you.